Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Loud Problem Solved. Years ago, I lived on a street that had another street branch off of it 2 doors down from my house. At the end of the other street was a group of younger dealers that rode scooters to do their business around town. I knew this because one of my friends bought from them on a regular basis. All hours of the day and night these stupid scooters buzzed up and down the street. A couple of them didn't have mufflers, so they were loud. I called the cops, but they were useless. I came up with the bright idea of spreading cinderblock grit, the material cinderblocks were made of, in the corner where the streets intersected. This material was grey, and it was like little ball bearings when spread on the pavement. I got a bucket of the grit and proceeded to spread it all over the corner. About that time, I heard the buzz of a scooter coming down the street. I literally had to jump over a fence into some bushes to avoid being seen. The scooter dealer dude hit the corner and the scooter flew out from under him. It sounded like a car crash. No injuries and just a broken mirror on the scooter. The whole bunch of them moved 3 days later, and it started raining about a day later and most of it washed away. Looking back on it, someone could have been injured, but they were dealers and they were a huge neighborhood nuisance. I took care of the problem. Next one is titled, Bully Gets Concussion Legally. Growing up I played hockey from kindergarten to my senior year of high school. It happened more by the fact that when my parents put me on skates on the age of 3, I surprised them by more or less learning to skate in one session. I was like that with most motor skills, a fact that would haunt me later as I got older. As I aged, I developed into a body more built for the offensive line in football, but the constant exercise and massive calorie requirements of ice hockey kept me in good shape through high school. It did mean I was generally 40 or 50 pounds heavier than everyone else on the ice, and while it did not affect my top speed, it did affect my acceleration. The predictable result was that I was always passed over for the traveling teams, and I gravitated to football where I was a defensive lineman. By the time I was in high school I more or less played hockey for fun and the exercise. I never made the high school team. This is in Minnesota, so it is a much bigger deal there. One of the reasons I loved sports so much was that I had a mild speech impediment. I had a tendency to slur my words if I did not speak carefully. Naturally, I was an easy target for bullies, especially in the 90s, when school were doing their level best to end physical bullying, in essence punishing me harder if I ever retaliated physically for the daily verbal torment I received. Entering my senior year and failing to make the high school team for the 4th and final time, I walked into my junior gold locker room to find an annoyance I knew. We will call him A for the time being. He was 2 years younger, and was a scrawny little shit who liked to harass people verbally. I mostly ignored him. I had moved to the area the year before I started high school, so I did not have the friends the other kids grew up with, and unfortunately this was the type of community that would freeze out people they did not grow up with. I was the kind of person who would target isolated people. He would not dare go after people with their friends. Since I spent my time mostly alone, he would try to harass me, but the obvious difference in size, at senior year I was 6'3", and 250 pounds of muscle from football, ice hockey, track and field, shot put, and summers spent in the weight room, and the fact I pointedly ignored him didn't give him much. While I ignored him, I did pay attention to what he did to others. In addition to harassing people of both genders verbally, he was also handsy, and more than once had been slapped by girls for groping them while passing them in halls. He was also inextricably able to get himself out of trouble like that, which should have gotten him suspended or expelled multiple times. By the time hockey season started, I really was starting to hate A within the school. I was more or less powerless to do anything about it without getting myself expelled, and all I could do at the time was simply bide my time, and hope I had a moment I could get him caught, or get revenge. I ignored her as I got dressed and we went through the opening basic drills for practice until we got to a forechecking drill. The drill is meant to get kids to be motivated going after puck in the corner after it had been dumped into the corner, and learn to prevent yourself from being hit from behind in the process. I thought a lot of his skills, and to his credit he was able to move well, though his credit he made was erased by his habit of slashing people with the stick. I thought he would show me up and made sure it was him against me. The first time we went through the drill he made it to the puck first and tried to dart away, but I knew he was going to make it first this time, and had instead set up to hit him. He was short enough he hit the boards instead of the glass. I wasn't at full speed, more half to 3/4, but the fact that I was more than 100 pounds heavier left him a crumpled mess on the ice. With him on the ground I grabbed the puck and skated away with it, and to piss him off I went down the ice to the other side of the rink and dumped the puck into the unused net. Our goalie was doing reaction drills off ice with a coach and a tennis ball. When I returned to the near blue line, A was there bruised and seething. He started running his mouth, but our coach shut him down. "If you want to play with the big boys you better be ready for the hits, A," the coach told him. The coach was father of one of our goalies, and both of them readily hated A. "If you are mad then hit back, legally," he told A, meaning for her to take the Gordie Howe approach and get your revenge without breaking the rules. The coach also had known me for 5 years as I had been on his son's team. Goaltenders tend to like the big defenders who shove people away from the crease, and punish people who crashed the net on them. By this point I was well into the coach's good graces, and he knew of my usual trick with dealing with smaller, faster players. We set up for the drill again. This time I was on the outside and the coach fired the puck so A would be the trailer. I could hear her coming up from behind me, and I guessed that he would cross-check from behind, the kind of dirty move referees almost never call smaller players on when they hit bigger players. Not wanting to take a wooden shaft to my back, I waited until I was nearing to goal line, and then hard stopped, letting my stick in my left hand. I used a lefty stick to touch the puck while plating my feet and dropping my shoulder. A crashed face first into my right shoulder. I had timed it nearly perfectly. He had just enough time to slow marginally, and learned away backwards, but he could not prevent the hit. In addition to the hit to the face, he prompt fell backwards, slamming back of his helmeted head into the ice. I had lost control of the puck and grabbed the puck and slowly went back to the line. By the time I reached the line, A was fumbling with the door latch to leave the rink and went off the ice. This was the last time we saw him at our practice, and I played for a U16 that years in a town about 30 miles away. Everything I had done to our illegal moves, both times I hit him, were to control possession of the puck, or to brace for a hit I knew was coming. I was conspicuously absent from school that week. I found out later he had a concussion. His mother tried to get me kicked off the team, but the coach and the other parents didn't like her, and most of them hated her kid. She was also my mother's boss, and tried to get her fired. My mother worked for the school district and filed a complaint, and started documenting A's mother's behavior. A's mother was nearly as hated as he was for more or less the same reasons. Eventually my mother transferred to a different job in the school district, and A's mother eventually overstepped and was fired for cause she had been stealing from the district for years. A never tried to annoy me again, and he avoided me at all costs after that. In most cases I never got the chance to get even with bullies like him, and he was a real tormentor of the kids his age. But getting the chance to crush a bully without any recourse at all felt real good. Next one is titled, "If I Can Screw Someone Over to Get Ahead I Will." I worked security for 2 years with a company, and before that I had worked a year at another security company. So I can say with confidence the general attitude is that we're in this together, being contractors, so security officers stick together. Maybe not a thin blue, tan line like police, but we definitely looked after each other. One coworker at a site I stayed at for about a year wasn't like that though. She straight up told everybody that her job was to man the computer and interact with the people coming and going from the guard shack. She didn't even do those 2 tasks particularly well, since there were numerous complaints about her attitude with guests, and another coworker who turned into a good friend of mine was always having to correct her work. She refused to make small talk as well, which might have suited the customer's security guy fine, but kinda chafed with us other guards. Our site supervisors had to twist her arm to get her to accept overtime or even go out on patrol, and any time there was a lull she was on her phone, flagrantly breaking the rules in front of the cameras. She had even, allegedly, but I wouldn't put it past her, admitted to my friend that if she ever had the chance to screw someone else to make herself look good she would. Calling her a cunt would be an insult to female reproductive organs as she lacked the warmth and depth. She was in good with the upper management of our company, however, so she got away with being a really shitty desk clerk. One of our myriad duties as security officers at that site was to ensure a plethora of keys were properly controlled and accounted for. This mostly meant making sure people signed them out properly and filling out a spreadsheet at the start of each shift. Well, one evening I'm pulling a 12-hour shift, so I'm there in the middle of second shift, which my friend worked the desk. For whatever reason he was going through the key box, when lo and behold a key was missing. Looking through the log there wasn't a concrete entry for it, but we had suspicion on one entry early in first shift, so it likely had been out since that morning. Well, coworker 1 stays till an hour into second shift, so she generally got a few reports done before she left. As it turned out, she had listed said key as being in the key box when she checked. Once this was realized, both coworker 2 and I had shit-eating, Cheshire cat grins on our faces. Of course we had to make it look official, so since I was going to be taking over the desk when coworker 2 left, it would be down to me. I'm not much of an actor, but I really nailed the surprised concern with my third shift partner as I discovered the key was missing, checked the logs, and then checked coworker 1's sheet. Of course a missing key required an incident report, and I did not hold back. I attached a copy of the log sheet and the key report, which had coworker 1's initials and the time she filled out the report. I also had to inform first shift about the report in turnover, but fortunately coworker 1 came in an hour after first shift started. That incident report was the last straw, and last I heard about it they were going to replace coworker 1, but I left that post about 2 months later and was fired just last week for unrelated reasons. I think I earned the slight fear of a few of the other guards thanks to that. And to head off such comments, I'm not a blue falcon. Were it anyone else I would have let the client contact do the legwork on investigating, and I'm sure it would have called for a reprimand, but since she had a history of screwing up paperwork, I think it was just the final nail in the coffin. I also am not normally that vicious, but by that point I was done with that site for several other reasons, so that was me getting some anger out. But boy did it feel good. Next one is titled, Me versus the World. I received a parking notice on my vehicle telling me my car was abandoned and will be towed to a city compound for not being moved. My car was parked in one spot legally, is registered and insured, and was only there for 2 days. This was on a residential street in front of my condo. When I noticed the slip on my window and went to investigate what it was, I noticed another person 2 condos over leering at me with a sense of accomplishment. I called the city information line and explained the situation. They retorted with, anyone can legally call on any car and without the real knowledge if the car moves daily or not get a notice placed within the day. The city is just doing their job. I was frustrated but then asked the person if that was the case, and without any investigation, L could theoretically call every vehicle on the street for abandonment and they would have to then just do their job. They replied with, seems like more trouble than it seems, but sure, not realizing that my pettiness knows no bounds. I did just that. I took photos of everyone's license plate parked on the street, entered each vehicle into my city's online site, and within 2 hours a city vehicle had shown up to unleash my devious plan. While taking the picture of one of the cars, the person leering at me before came out of his door and asked, why are you photographing my car? This is a private neighborhood. Whatever he was trying to say was obviously blinded by rage, and I just proceeded to give a devilish smile and walked into my unit. My city worker hero called me, as you must provide loose info before entering vehicle complaints, and I answered and explained what had all unfolded throughout the day, not leaving any parts out or any lack of info on what my part in all this was. He laughed, amused at what I had devised, and replied with, this is the easiest last 2 hours of my night, thank you for this. I laughed, said no problem, and went to sleep with every vehicle with a parking complaint. Last one is titled, Eat a Tired New Mum's Snacks? It's over, Buster. A couple of things about me that made it really suck to have a food thief. I have a lot of food allergies, so I can't just get lunch at the cafeteria or at a nearby restaurant. I have a new baby, who I'm breastfeeding, and who I pump for when I'm at work. Do you know how hungry pregnant people are? Yeah, the caloric requirement for breastfeeding is 100 to 200 calories higher. I am always hungry. Because I have a new baby, half the time I don't manage to show up at work with lunch. I either run out of time to pack one, or if I did remember, I leave it on the counter. My solution to all of this was to leave lots of non-perishable snacks in my office. And also a lot of candy, because I also have a 3-year-old and therefore work is the only place I can shovel Skittles into my mouth without a little hand extending into my field of vision and a little voice saying, "Please." Snacks that were specifically free of my allergens. Some of which were specialty foods because of this. The type of specialty food that just doesn't taste as good as food that contains the allergen, and also costs twice as much. Because I'm not getting a lot of sleep right now. I deserve nice things. So, because I'm not getting a lot of sleep right now, when I first came back from maternity leave, assembled my snack hoard, and started having things go missing, I genuinely thought I was just losing my mind. Boxes of candy were running out faster than I thought I was eating them. I'd come in the morning and things wouldn't be where I'd left them. At one point I brought a bag of chips to work, folded the rim of the bag down so I wasn't plunging my arm elbow deep into a grease pit, and then put a bag clip on it when I went home, and when I came in the next morning the bag was unrolled and reclipped. I went, "Wow, I must be more tired than I thought," rolled the bag back down, and the next morning it was unrolled again. Just little things like that, almost every day, that made me go, "Wow, the post-baby brain is worse than I thought." And then I got the flu. I got the flu, and I was out for a whole week. Left behind at the office was an almost full box of Enjoy Life cookies, which are not enjoyable but are free of all major allergens, and are also $5 a box for, like, 12 sad little sand pies with some cinnamon on top. I ate one row of these cookies. And then I was out of the office for a week. For 1 week, I was not eating any of my snack hoard. But someone else was. Because I came back to work, opened my box of cookies, and found one. There was one single, solitary cookie left. And, on further examination, the one box of candy that had been opened was nowhere to be found, and on top of that the thief had done me the courtesy of opening a new box for me, except that they actually followed the "push here to open" instructions instead of just ripping one end of the box open like I do, which they should damn well know at this point, because by this time they'd been stealing from me for 2 goddamn months. The combination of these two things, the sheer freaking audacity it takes to open a new box so you can continue stealing from someone, on top of the consumption of almost a whole box of specialty cookies that aren't even good, enraged me enough that, after going to my boss and getting some vague promises about checking if the security cameras in my wing of the building are functional or not, I went straight to Amazon and ordered myself a nanny cam. Not for my baby. For my snack hoard. Conveniently, it arrived the day before Valentine's Day. I set it up on top of a file cabinet looking down at my desk. On the desk, I laid out a fantastic spread of bait snacks. I got all my thief's favorites, and then I took it one step further. I bought myself a Valentine's heart, broke the seal to make it more inviting, and left it out on my desk. The next morning, I came into some very obvious snack carnage. My thief had slowly been getting more brazen. Again, who opens a new box of something? And opens it differently than the person they are stealing from. But this was just on another level. Individually wrapped things had been dumped out of their boxes. Bits of the packaging had been thrown away. And, yup, they'd eaten some of the Valentine candy. For shame, office thief. Don't you know that's from someone who loves me? I played back the video. All was quiet throughout most of the evening, and I was just watching the shadows lengthen as the sun slowly set through the hallway window. And then, shortly before midnight, the night janitor arrived. And went right ahead and took a 12-minute break in my office, sitting in my chair, eating my food. I started taking screenshots. I got him shoveling candy into his mouth with full palm to lips intensity. Pouring things out onto the desk to pick his favorite flavors. Not even bothering to put them back where he found them. And yes, eating my goddamn Valentine's candy. Screenshots went directly to my boss in an email. I went directly to my boss's door to hover and grin and ask if he'd read my email. And I got assurances of a strongly worded email to the cleaning company and the barring of this particular employee from our place of business. I was also, tactfully, asked to please take my unauthorized spy camera home, which I did. I thought this was over, until the girl who works the concession stand dropped by to thank me. Apparently, the food thief would start his shift just as she was closing down for the night, and would try to get free coffee in that creepy guy way. And then one of the reception staff came by with the same sentiments. I'd never met the guy face to face, but apparently, as a woman, it was not a fun experience to have. I'd shown my screenshots to a few co-workers, whose eating 5 rabbits in a longcoat's food had become office gossip by this point, and word had spread fast. I worked an earlier shift, so I didn't recognize him, but people whose shifts overlapped with his did. I hadn't told my husband about what I'd done because, when I came home raging about the blatant theft that had gone on while I'd had the flu, his only response had been, "You really shouldn't be leaving food at work, then." But, when I came home with the nanny cam and explained where and why I'd gotten it, his reaction surprised me. "You know, I think this is the first time I've seen you stand up for yourself. I'm proud of you." You know what? I'm proud of myself too. Thanks for listening.